In the beginning, it was very
Yeah.
difficult, but when I first started in LA, I worked at Cedars-Sinai. Yeah, they are definitely a top tier hospital. I was definitely like, ooh, this is luxurious. And so when I got there, they were like really like banging in the make sure you customer service. Like that's very important. Make sure the patient is happy. And I'm like, okay, like, but then you get cussed out by patients.
Right.
And like called all types of names, and you just got to be like, I'm sorry you feel that way. How can I make it better for you?
This is the Cinematography for Actors podcast.
More than a podcast, Cinematography for Actors is a vibrant community devoted to bridging the gap between talent and crew. Each week, our show offers transparent, insightful conversations with industry leaders. We unveil the magic behind the scenes, from candid discussions about unique filmmaking processes to in-depth technical exploration. Join us in unraveling the intricacies of filmmaking, one episode at a time. It's more than just cameras and lenses. We aim to inspire, educate, and empower as we peel back the curtain on the art of effective storytelling. Now on to the episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special episode of Cinematography for Actors. This is one of our short episodes from Mammoth Film Festival. But today, instead of filmmakers, I, your host, Haley Royal, have found some nurses. Actually, these nurses found us.
Yeah,
They came to us. They weathered the storm. They're out here to snowboard, and they ended up in the press lounge. And because everyone else has canceled their interviews or just can't get here because of the snow, I forced them onto the couch. So thank you so much for being here with us, guys.
you're
Can I
welcome.
get names from everybody, starting from this side of the couch?
Okay, cool. My name's Toby Ojulade. I'm Nigerian.
Oluwatobi?
Toby, but my friends call me Toby.
Okay,
Yeah.
Toby?
Yeah.
Oluwatobi?
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
I'm Dylan, last name Allen.
Dylan Allen. And?
I'm Courtney, Innocent.
Hi, Courtney. Wait, is Innocent your real last name?
Yes, it is.
That's incredible. Courtney Innocent. Okay, but Toby.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, nurses, but Toby also.
Right. Starting my
told
acting
us.
journey. I started it, actually, like I said, I'm from New York.
Mhm.
Did some off-Broadway theater in New York. Always wanted to kind of be in front of the screen, in front of the camera and stuff like that. So use my like nursing, not that I only did nursing school just to move to LA, but considering there's travel nursing now out there, I was like, let me just go to LA. I could have a job, but also pursue my passion. So that's all been kind of the whole process of it all.
Yeah. Use travel nursing to get yourself where
To
you
LA,
need to
yeah,
be,
for sure. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
start doing it.
Right.
And you've booked something, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm shooting a small film for it's a USC students master project on the 8th of March. So that'll be like my first little, although I did do a small film in Brooklyn when I was living there, but that was kind of like, but this is more like something where I want to review the script and really live through a character, as opposed to something where I'm just like, let me just do this for fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so being a nurse in Los Angeles, have you all been nurses in other places as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does it
Yes.
differ?
Wait, where are you from first?
Okay, originally from
yeah.
Chicago. I have nursed in Chicago for 3.5 years, on and off. Well, 3.5 years, and I came back for local contracts. But I also nursed in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, and LA now for the last 2 years. I want to say, honestly, the customer service is like higher on the totem pole in LA
Okay,
for patients than
that's good.
all the other places I worked at.
Okay. Is that hard for you though? Because then instead of just being like a nurse, you have to also kind of like take care of people and like.
In the beginning, it was very difficult, but when I first started in LA, I worked at Cedars-Sinai.
Okay.
And
Cedar.
they are
Is
like
that where you were
the
born?
top of the top.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they are definitely a top
Yeah.
tier hospital. I was definitely like, ooh, this is luxurious. And so when I got there, they were like really like banging in the make sure you customer service. Like that's very important. Make sure the patient is happy. And I'm like, okay, like, but then you get cussed out by patients.
Right.
And like called all types of names, and you just got to be like, I'm sorry you feel that way. How can I make it better for you?
Oh,
That's not
And
fair
it's
when you're
just like,
actively trying to take care of their body
Yeah.
for them.
exactly. And it's
and then a
like,
lot of people know that, and they use that. They take advantage
yeah, they
of that
do.
idea.
They
And if
do.
you don't, are you not specific to how they feel? You can get fired, and they'll be like, "I want another nurse. Get
Yeah,
me
that can do
somebody who is
that.
going to listen to me."
Yeah. They
That's
can
a little
definitely
rough.
request a
Yeah,
different
it's a little
nurse
That's
for
rough.
sure.
I mean, yes, as a person who's a patient, normally I'm like, yeah, I want to feel like I'm being cared for
Yeah.
and like they see me as a person. But
Mhm.
if I'm not seeing them as a person, that's a problem.
Right. And like everyone that comes in the ER, you have to think in your head, well, at Cedars, you think in your head, like, it doesn't matter how small their emergency is,
Mhm.
it's their emergency.
It's their biggest
Yeah.
emergency.
Right. And it's like they're having a hard time no matter
Mhm.
what. And I'm like, okay, all right.
Not to be a huge actor about it, but someone coming in when their emergency is their biggest emergency is something that we talk about a lot in an acting class where they're like, why are you doing this scene right now?
Yeah,
And
being
it's because
specific.
that is
Yeah.
your biggest emergency. That is the
Mhm.
biggest thing that will happen to your character at this time. So there's a little crossover there.
Wow,
You
okay.
have to remember that person is having their biggest emergency.
Right. Yeah. No matter
as
how of a
actors.
jerk they are
Yeah.
sometimes.
It's definitely something that I face a lot, doing both. One
Mhm.
being the literal, what's the emergency, what's priority, and the other one being, what is your emotional priority?
Mhm.
And crossing between what's okay and how you have to kind of use your defense mechanisms
Yeah.
at your job,
Mhm.
but kind of drop those defense mechanisms in your acting so
Yeah.
you can kind of portray humanity.
Yes.
So to a fault, when you're working, you have to like put up so many walls,
Mhm.
and that's on an everyday basis. So it's been so hard to transition to, okay, when I'm in class, like this is how you really should be feeling. And I'm like,
Yeah.
bro,
You're moving to
yeah,
work that's
yeah.
like, okay, let it all out,
Right.
feel
Right,
everything,
yeah.
share everything, be vulnerable.
And there's a lot of evidence to do
Mhm.
that, but letting that go and creating that is not easy.
No, not
Yeah.
easy at all. How do you feel about taking care of people at certain hospitals as opposed to others?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm from Ohio,
Okay.
and so I born and raised out there. I went to nursing school out there. My first job was in a small community hospital in a suburb of the Akron Canton area. And I will say the patients that I had there were like, well, just in general, like I feel like compared to like in LA, I think the biggest thing I've noticed is the language barrier.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish, and a
Mhm.
lot of our patients speak Spanish.
Yes.
And also, there's a lot of Korean and other languages versus like in Ohio. My first job was a year and a half, and I remember I only had one single patient ever who didn't speak English.
Wow.
And she spoke Russian, but like all of her family was there and they
Yeah.
spoke English. And
Right.
kind of a big barrier when you're taking care of people, especially in the emergency room. You have people coming in who very limited communication, and say if you don't have anybody there that speaks Spanish around you or Korean or whatever the language is, um, it could take a long time to get like we have a translator like iPad that we'll use, but if
Right.
it's a true emergency, like you don't have the time for that.
You don't want
make it
that
up.
And
bogging
it's just
Charades.
you're
Like, who
doing
gave us
charades, you're
charades?
acting things out,
Yeah.
you're like looking
Yeah.
up words, you learn like very simple words to use, but it's just
Wow.
We have some exciting news. CFA has teamed up with We Make Movies to get you a discount on production management services, including access to comprehensive production insurance and workers' comp for your next shoot. Visit wemakemovies.org/insurance and use code CFA23 on your intake form for 10% off your quote.
it's a big difference. And then like I worked as a travel nurse as well. So I also worked in New Mexico, in Albuquerque and Rio Rancho. Yeah, that was the first place I ever moved.
Mhm.
When I was 24, I started working as a travel nurse, moved out of Ohio. I went to New Mexico, and then I went to Washington State, and then ultimately came to the LA area as a travel nurse.
Mhm.
And I didn't work in the ER at the time, so it was different in like the patient care that I gave. I was doing inpatient on the cardiac unit.
Mhm.
But yeah, I definitely think where we work in downtown LA, also in the emergency room, it's very different patient clientele. You see a lot of stuff.
Uh-huh.
You gotta have a thick
Yeah.
skin.
Yeah.
Sometimes like when we're orienting newer nurses or newer staff, I don't even like, we'll see things every day that might be traumatic for somebody who's never seen it before.
Right.
And I have to remember to like let them process that.
Like be gentle with
Be
the
gentle.
new
Yeah,
nurses.
because like
Yeah.
people sometimes
Yeah.
will think like, oh my gosh, you guys have like, I don't want to say no empathy, but I've had people say that to me before. Like, how can you go about your day after you've just seen, somebody die or, something very traumatic happen? And I'm like, well, if you don't learn to laugh and compartmentalize, you'll cry. So,
Right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Gonna bridge the gap again between acting and
Yeah.
because there are a lot of jobs where you have to become like an evil person or do something evil, and in order to do it well, a lot of people will go method or will you do have to take on the emotions that you would feel as a person doing that thing. And so sometimes people get stuck. You hear stories of people who get stuck in that when it ruins their life. So being able to turn that off and compartmentalize between where you're doing a performance and where your real life is something you have to be able to do on a smaller scale, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of really exciting crossover. Also, ER nurses are actors, especially in places where you cannot speak the same language as somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
you are actually acting out like, where does it hurt?
Where's your
Yeah.
hurt? Like, feel it on your
Yeah,
body.
yeah.
Yeah, that is so amazing. Well, okay, so you said that you have a contract that's coming up soon.
Well,
Is
yeah, I
that
mean, I
how
just
all of your
extended.
contracts work?
Normally, like with the nurses, it's every like 3 months. 13 weeks they call it, 3 months. And then if you want to stay, you can stay, but they have to extend you. Hopefully they like you, because they could be like, no, we don't want to extend this person.
Right, it's like a request.
Luckily for me, I've been extended a bunch of times already.
Okay.
And then my next extension is till June.
Okay.
So it's either, and then at the hospital that we're working at, I've hit my year mark. So you can't work at the same hospital for a year and still be considered a traveler.
Oh, okay.
So you either have to not work for 30 days or go find another travel contract.
And
I
doesn't it
see.
also, it has to do, I think, with taxes as well, right?
Right,
Because
exactly, yeah.
I don't work as a
Because
traveler
you become
anymore,
a
but I
resident
used
of
to.
LA, and now it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, we want to tax you.
So you gotta get
is
a
there
job
any
outside of
interest in becoming a resident and just, like having that job as a nurse at that hospital forever? Can you swap contracts that way? Or do you
It's
want to do
just
that?
it's a matter of I mean, if you want to, a lot of people do that. Like they find a hospital, they're very comfortable, and they're just like, this is where I want to stay.
Mhm.
So I'll stay here
Yeah.
if that's like your plan. But
Okay.
then there is a pay cut to it.
Yeah.
That's what I did. So I worked as a travel nurse it was 2016, 2017, 2018. So it was all before COVID. So like definitely travel nursing changed during the pandemic. But I ultimately was kind of getting burnt out with the idea of like, oh my gosh, like my contract's up in 3 weeks and I don't have another job lined up and I don't know where to be
Yeah.
living. And it definitely is like a personality type that I don't really think I have. I'm surprised I did it
Okay.
as long as I did.
Yeah.
But I came to California as a travel nurse and ultimately liked the hospital. It's different than the hospital I'm at now. I've worked at 3 different hospitals since I've been in California, but
Yeah.
I like the hospital, and it's nice for the managers of that hospital. If you've already worked there as a traveler for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, they would love to hire you because it's one, cheaper for them to employ you versus hiring you out as a subcontractor. And two, they don't need to orient you, train you, and they already know you're a good employee if they want to hire you. So
I
they
got that
know
the
what
other
they're
day. They were
getting.
like, when are you becoming staff? I'm like,
Which,
we'll see.
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
let me
See
do the
how
math
acting
on
goes.
and the pros and cons of like travel nursing and being a traveler versus being staff is when you're a traveler, you usually don't get, vacation time. There's not like the benefits sometimes of like health insurance and 401k. Some companies there are, some there aren't. But and then California, the one nice thing that the California has versus a lot of other states is a nursing union, which like I didn't have a nursing union when I worked in Ohio, and it was awful because basically they could just max you out to unsafe patient ratios to the nurses, and the upper management will say like, well, it's your license on the line. If you refuse and say this is too hard for you, we could turn around and say you're refusing patient care, you're going to abandon your patients, and you can get fired and lose your license like
Yeah.
fast.
Wow.
That's the one
And
question
it's
I didn't answer before was the difference between working in the East Coast and working in California.
Is there
The patient ratios.
yeah.
Here's like
yeah.
3 to 4 patients per nurse.
I
Out
see.
East, it's like
They can give
it's
you
more of
whatever
it's more of
they
an
want.
average. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more
I
they
of an
try to
average,
keep
yeah.
it for minimum.
Getting that mic.
They try to keep it for minimum.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
at the hospital that I started at, but honestly, it can get up to 6 to 8 sometimes,
Yeah.
That's a
depending
lot.
on
That is so many people.
depending on how many ICUs, how packed
Yeah.
the ICU is, and plus, like we got a lot of ODs, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
that was
Yeah.
I was going to say also another thing that's very different in nursing from other states compared to California is because of the
I
union.
knew it. She was all like,
You get breaks in California. You
Yeah.
get a lunch break. You clock out, and that is California is the only state.
Where you?
I mean, I've worked in 4 states.
Yeah.
It's the only state where you clock out and you actually get a lunch break.
Wow.
And in Ohio, so I actually remember before I became a nurse,
Yeah.
where I worked,
Yeah.
no union, and and actually the hospital, like the nurses wanted a union, and because the management didn't want it, there was actually I didn't find this out till after I got hired at my first job, but there was like a lockout of a wage increase. This was 10 years ago. This was in 2014, but I knew nurses in Ohio in 2014 who were working in the ICU who were making $17 an hour.
No. Okay. Pay nurses. And
Amen,
also that's
amen.
one thing, like
And that hospital has since closed down.
We also really love unions.
Yeah, it's
Hollywood,
great,
so,
right? Like,
yeah.
and that's the thing is that but I still so when I was 21, I remember I was out at a bar. I was about to graduate and be a nurse. And I was at this bar, and this girl came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, I'm a nurse. You're going to school to be a nurse. Like, let me just tell you, get used to never taking a break. You never clock out. You'll never eat. If you go to the break room to eat your lunch, you will get judged as being like the lazy nurse."
That is so
just,
toxic.
and I remember
I
I'm like,
hate
I'm
that.
graduating in a few months, and I'm just like, what the
You're
heck?
like,
For 12
which
hours, I'm not
states
even
do I
allowed
take a break?
I'm not even allowed to go to the break room. Like, and then if you do, you're considered like,
Yeah.
because you want to give yourself 30 minutes of like
Yeah.
mental break after 12 hours, you're considered like the lazy one or the whatever.
Okay.
So
let's stop-
in California, you get,
That's
even
not
on like the
working.
worst, I feel like the worst days, like you will still, you get a break, you get to go to the break room.
Still get
like,
lunch.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks to California. And thank you so much, you guys, for coming in here and being so game to sit. That was so cool
Yeah.
for this very special episode of Cinematography for Nurses, bridging the gap
Nice.
between entertainment and medicine today. Thanks, you guys. We'll get you guys links and show notes, and keep an eye out, CFA, for
you never
Toby
know.
in the community. We're
Yup.
going to look for that short film soon.
Amen.
Thank you so much for being here with me, guys.
Thanks for
course.
having us.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Join us in bridging the gap between talent and crew. Start by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform, sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on vendor discounts, community events, and new podcast releases, and educate yourself through our free course releases on YouTube. It all starts at cinematographyforactors.com. And if you like this episode, consider leaving a review to make it easier for other listeners to find us.